All right. Well, welcome everyone. We're glad that you're joining us. This is our third day of the World's Best Education Abroad Fair. This is the UCAP information session and student panel. So the first part of this session will be me giving you an info session, and then the second half, Macy is going to moderate the student panel Q&A part. So we ask that you kind of hold your questions to the end. You can be placing them in the chat box, because then Macy can be adding them to her list of Q&As if you are thinking of things that you want to ask the student panelists along the way, so she can start putting those onto her list. So
Yes.
let me find my button. So this is the first step to learn abroad session. So if you're thinking about studying abroad, of course, you're going to start in the My UCR Abroad portal. So some of you, you're like, okay, I've already might have seen this. Well, basically, the session I'm giving you is completely the first step to learn abroad, which is number 3 on My UCR Abroad. So if at some point you're like, I have no idea what this woman said, you can always go back to My UCR Abroad and watch that webinar. The only difference is I'm going to get to tell you a lot of interesting stories and crazy things along the way. Because this is the first step to learn abroad, you're all going to get credit for taking this session, whether you've done it already virtually or taking it right now. Tomorrow, I will be sending you an email regarding next steps. So who are your advisors? Of course, you have myself. My name is LaSharon McLean Perez. I am the assistant director here. I oversee the OAP and part of the UCAP programs. I am one of you. I am a Highlander alum. I did my undergraduate in theater, and I studied abroad in Italy and did my graduate school in Australia. And then my colleague here, Macy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Macy Ring. I'm also an assistant director of education abroad, and I'm also a UCR alum. I graduated in 2005, and I got to learn abroad for a year in Canada and South Korea for a summer. And I've been in this role now for 7 years, and I really do look forward to working with each and all of you to learn abroad soon.
So you have 2 of your own helping you through this process. So common myths. Before I get into good stuff, I like making things interactive. Give me some reasons why you think UCR students do not want to study abroad. So you can either come off mute, you can use the chat box, but tell me why you think students don't want to study abroad. It's too expensive. I can't afford that. I can barely afford Starbucks right now, let alone gas. Speaking strictly from a personal experience, the process of why it seems a bit complex. Yes, interesting process. It doesn't work into my plan or my degree plan. It's too dangerous. So there are a lot of various reasons why students do not study abroad. So it's too dangerous to go overseas. I might as well stay at home. Well, welcome to UCR. I'm sure you've gotten a lot of UCR notifications. It almost seems too dangerous to be at UCR. The good part about it is that we are going to try to prepare you for a lot of different things while going abroad. There's a saying that there's no guaranteed safety. You could be sitting at home, a tree could fall on your house, a car could drive through your house. But we're going to do our best. You're going to go through pre-departure orientations with us. Once you get on site, you will also have on-site orientation with the staff there. So we've been, well, at least I've been doing this 15 years. Macy now has been here maybe 5-6 years, I think. I've seen everything. So I would have thought, okay, yeah, a coup, a tsunami, now a pandemic. So the most of our students do end up in trouble with is you drink too much while you're abroad. So I'm not going to tell you not to drink, but I say watch the drinking. So that's usually where the safety hazards really come in. course, international experience isn't important for my future job or to my employer. I was one of those students. I was going to be the next Oprah, not realizing my entire job was going to be international. And even if your job is not international, you may be working for a company or an organization that has a lot of international ties. Now, when it comes to setting yourself apart when you're going into the career field, this is an opportunity that does that. Only 10% of American college students actually study abroad. That's from Hawaii to the East Coast. So that is not a lot of students. And if you're talking about the UCR population, less than 1% of UCR students actually study abroad. So you're really showing that you can stand out, problem solve, become familiar with the unfamiliar, learn a new language, learn about a culture. Of course, I can't make progress toward my degree if I go overseas. Well, the key word in study abroad is that steady part. So we want to keep you on track. So whether you're doing major, minor, breadth requirements, language requirements, or electives, anything that you're doing abroad, we want to make sure somehow it's going to fit into your degree audit that you're going to graduate on time. Doesn't mean some students will take stuff that has nothing to do with their major or their minor. They just want to take something because they want to learn it. But whatever you're going to do, we want to make sure you're going to graduate on time. And then, of course, finance this. So we are definitely going to talk about the big elephant in the room of how do I make this work? And then, of course, does it really matter? Well, it does matter because not only are you going to learn new stuff about your academic field, you're going to learn a little bit about yourself. You may learn a little about a culture or learn a language. Basically, in the end, you're really becoming familiar with the unfamiliar. So our programs, our office oversees 3 types of programs. So the faculty-led education abroad program known as FLEAP, the University of California Education Abroad program known as UCEAP, and the Opportunities Abroad program known as OAP. With FLEAP, you go out with UCR faculty in the summer taking 2 classes anywhere from 5 to 7 weeks. Because it is UCR faculty, it's UCR courses you're taking. Just think of it as summer session, but abroad, because that's all it really is. You're taking summer session classes that happen to be abroad. Because it is UCR classes, of course, you're receiving UCR credit, and you can use all of your eligible financial aid. So that's federal, state, institutional aid, as well as VA benefits. Because this is based on faculty interests, the list of countries change every year. So whatever we offer this year may not be the same offerings next year. UCAP is the UC system-wide program. So this is strictly for all UC students. So you must be a UC student at any one of the UC campuses. With this program, of course, you remain a UCR student. You're going to receive UC credit. And because it's a system-wide program, so you got about 43 different countries, lots of different options. You can go on a summer length program, semester length. There are a few quarter length programs as well as year length. And because you are receiving UC credit, again, you can use all of your eligible aid just like the FLEAP program. So federal, state, institutional aid, VA benefits. The biggest difference with UCAP, it's not just study abroad programs, but they also have internship and research programs. So if you're thinking, oh, I don't really want to study something, I want to do something else, you have a couple additional options available to you. Now, our next program, OAP, is our big umbrella program. So this is our program that has the most flexibility. So a few of you have already attended some sessions earlier today or even yesterday. Those would have been with a lot of our OAP partners. When you're thinking OAP, just think the O means outside, meaning outside of UCR and outside UCAP. So with OAP, you can go with other US institutions, you can go through a third-party organization, or you can do a direct enrollment to an institution abroad. Because of that flexibility, you can have programs as short as 2 weeks up to a year long. That also means you could be almost anywhere in the world. So if you want to go to Antarctica, we've got a program that goes to Antarctica. The biggest difference is that if you're going to do a program for credit, it's going to be transfer credit. So you're going to receive the letter grade and credit, but it does not factor into your GPA like the other two programs. Also, because it's transfer credit, you can only use eligible federal and state aid. So if you have a lot of UCR grants, you may want to be looking at either UCAP or FLEET. If you happen to be a student who has DACA, that's another reason you may want to consider UCAP or FLEET, because you're not going to be able to use the UCR grants on this program. Because OAP is another big umbrella type programs, again, you don't have just study, but you have internship, research, teach abroad, volunteer abroad, and even work abroad programs. So lots of different variety of programs for you to do. So those were our programs. Within the programs, you have options. So full immersion is basically kind of what you're doing right now at UCR. You're going to go to the host institution. You're going to be able to take classes directly from their course catalog alongside with the students. So if you tell me you want to go to Spain, of course, the first question that I may ask is how much Spanish you have. None. Well, you're not going to Spain. Well, our second program allows for that, which is a non-immersion program. Think of non-immersion similar to our extension center, where you may be going to a building that may be on or near a campus, but all of your classes are going to be either taken with UC students or English speaking students. That means you're not going to have the institution's full course catalog to you. You're going to have a smaller list of classes that are going to be taught in English. Next is the language and culture programs, and that's basically what they are. They're language and culture. They'll have a language class and maybe 1 or 2 culture classes. This is great if you're a CHAS, School of Public Policy, School of Business, or a GSOE students, because all of you require a language as part of your degree. You can use a language and culture program to help you fulfill those credits. And last is a special focus program. And this is designed with various academic fields in mind. So an example of this would be the UCAP program to Costa Rica. It's a tropical biology program. That's all it teaches is tropical biology. So if you tell me you're a dance major, that's great. You can go on the program as a dance major. You just won't have any dance classes. So you'll have a lot of special focus programs geared towards STEM majors, poli-sci, psychology, business, performing and fine arts, and a few other fields out there. Next is eligibility requirements. So all of our programs have a GPA requirement anywhere from a 2.0 up to a 3.5. If you're like, I have a 4.0, you can pick anything. So if you have higher than a 3.5, you pretty much have the entire catalog to you. So sometimes I see students who'll message me, I have a 3.7, I can't do a program. No, you're fine, you have everything. This GPA is your cumulative GPA at the time of application. So some of you may be applying for this February 15th deadline coming up. That means your fall transcript, you must have that GPA. If you're thinking of applying for a winter or spring program, that's the April deadline, that means at the end of winter quarter, your cumulative GPA must meet that requirement. Class level, so some programs may require sophomore standing or junior or higher standing. So if you are a freshman, you could potentially already have sophomore standing because of AP classes or even community college courses. But the standing is not necessarily at the time of application. So for instance, if I have a program that requires me to have sophomore standing and I'm currently a freshman right now, that means at the end of spring quarter, I must already be at sophomore standing. Language requirements, this could be anything from no requirement up to 2 years. However, this requirement, again, does not necessarily need to be met at the time of application. For instance, if I was doing a program to France and it required 1 year of French, and I'm currently this winter quarter in French 2, we would conditionally accept you, but you would need to complete French 3 by the So as long as you can complete the requirement prior to your departure, we will accept you conditionally. Same thing with the course prerequisite. You don't necessarily have had to meet that requirement at the time of application, but you need to be able to complete the courses before your departure of your program. So financing, this is a biggie. If you don't listen to anything I say today, this is what I'm hoping that you do here. Because tomorrow, if you're still hanging out with us for WorldFest, tomorrow's the money day. So tomorrow we will have a session with financial aid, as well as Macy will be doing a scholarship workshop. So you definitely want to pay attention to those things. So financing study abroad, a lot of times students think, I'm not gonna have to do this or that to make it work. First of all, we have programs that vary in range in terms of costs. When you're looking at the sticker cost, if it's a fleet program or a UCAP, you're looking at the entire cost. We're budgeting everything from your tuition, your airfare, your living arrangements, all of those good things. If you're doing an OAP program, all you see on the OAP provider are the program costs they cover. However, when we're packaging you with financial aid, you may see a much bigger number because we're working with your program to also package in your airfare and all these other costs that they may not cover. So if you're that student who normally declines your loans, this is going to be the one time in your university career you are not going to decline your loans, because you're going to need everything to make this opportunity work. Now, if you're thinking, well, I don't have that much money, well, think about the varying different programs. Some programs are going to be more expensive than being at UCR. Some may be more affordable. So you're going to have to start planning and doing your research, budget accordingly. I always say at this point, you want to get on the beg, borrow, steal plan. Beg, mom, dad, community, friends. You guys, I wish I had all of the social media tools that you have now in terms of crowdfunding and all these different things that did not exist when I was a student. I had dial-up, thanks AOL. So you have so many different ways to reach out to the world and the community at large to help you with your experience. If you have birthdays, holidays, things that are coming up prior to your departure, instead of asking for gifts, get yourself a bank account and have everyone donate to that. Again, we already talked about financial aid. Of course, you're going to need everything. So you're going to be taking out all your grants, all your loans. My hint to you, if you are a student who is thinking about studying abroad during the 2022-23 academic year, and this academic year you declined your loans, my recommendation is to go back to your financial aid counselor and ask them to reinstate your loans. Take that money, set it aside, and have it to go and help you with your program costs for next year. Financial aid, they're not going to ask you why you need the money back. You don't need to explain to them how you're using it. Just take it, put it aside. Don't go on a cruise or whatnot. Just put the money aside to help you with your finances next year. Next, scholarships. You should be applying to everything you are eligible for. This is the one place where you see our students really break my heart. I don't care if you're thinking, oh, I don't want to do it. It's too much work. There's a lot of things. I'm not going to get it because too many people are applying. No, there are not too many people applying. You should be applying for everything. If you're eligible for it, I don't care. It's the one time I would tell people I'm Black, I'm Jew, I'm this, I'm that. I'm telling everybody everything. I'm going to take every one of your dollars and take it with me abroad. If we have a travel grant, you should be taking advantage of that. If you're a DACA student, you should be taking advantage of the DACA grant. Macy's going to talk in her scholarship session tomorrow about how to be successful in getting these scholarships. So you should be taking advantage. Go to the ARC where the Writing Center is, work with Jennifer and her team, get a solid essay and get this money. So I shouldn't be seeing you talk about, well, I have to withdraw from my program. Why? Because I can't afford it. Because the first thing I'm going to ask you, did you apply for scholarships? No. I'm telling you, on January 26th, apply for scholarships. So next steps to studying abroad. So you're thinking, okay, how do I pick a program? So it doesn't matter which program you're looking at, we want you to take advantage of an opportunity. But if you come to me specifically and you ask me, I want to go somewhere, and I'm going to be like, where do you want to go? I don't know, pick for me. Don't let me pick for you. I'm going to send you Botswana, because one, I haven't sent a student in a long time to Botswana. I don't think I can send anybody to Botswana right now. I think we closed it. So I'll send you to Poland, because I haven't sent anybody to Poland in a long time either. So if you're like, I don't want to go to any of those places, think of it in these 4 ways. Personally, academically, professionally, and practically, what are your reasons for going abroad? So academically, you could come to me and Macy, tell us your major. We're going to have a laundry list of programs for you to choose from. But it's going to be a very boring study abroad program if you just go to school and go home. What do you want to experience outside the classroom? What do you want to see? What do you want to eat? What do you want to do? Is there family members you want to connect with? So what are your personal reasons? For myself, some of you may have already heard this before. My reason for going abroad, I had no academics reasons. It was all personal. I wanted to date hot guys and eat good food. So I went to Italy to date hot guys and eat good food. And boy, did I do both. So those were my personal reasons. I've had various students. I had one student who wanted to go to Western Australia. And now, if you know anything about Australia, most people don't go to Western Australia. They mostly are on the East. And so when I asked him, why do you want to go to Western Australia? I want to go wrestle in the WWE Performance Center there. And I'm like, there's one here in the United States. He goes, I have a better chance of doing amateur wrestling there than here in the US. And he did. He actually went, and he would send me videos and photos of him doing wrestling matches in Australia. So those were his personal reasons. Then what do you want to do professionally and practically? Do you want to do an internship? Do you want to do a volunteer program? Do you want to do research? So once you kind of start layering these things on, it makes it a little bit easier for us to help you identify where you want to go and for how long that program will be. And once we've narrowed down that for the program, then we can really start discussing how you want to finance education abroad. And so Macy's been dropping links along the way. So if you're thinking about, okay, how do I finance this? I've already mentioned Sophia is our financial aid counselor for the Education Abroad office. You can always find her information on the homepage of the My UCR Abroad portal. So you can make appointments with her there as well. And then, of course, are you eligible for the program? And then again, meeting the application deadline. So whatever deadline you see in the My UCR Abroad portal, your application is going to be due by 11:59 p.m. that date. So if you wait till midnight, you're already too late because the application is going to close out on you. And then, of course, lastly, do you have a passport? So if you don't have a passport, my recommendation right now is to go ahead and apply. The good thing about it is you apply for your program to study abroad. Remember, half travel grant. Well, you all pay these $2 to the Education Abroad office. Well, the committee has a half travel grant where you can get up to so much money that will cover part of your travel expenses as well as the passport. So you can get reimbursed for these costs later. Then, of course, we're going back to deadlines. They're coming up. So you've already missed several deadlines. We've got more deadlines coming up, so you don't want to be missing them. You want to start figuring this process out now so that you don't miss anything. But you also notice you're always planning 6 to 12 months in advance. So you can see we're taking applications right now for students who want to study summer, fall, and year of the next academic year. And so for us, we're creatures of habit here at UCR. So if you're thinking, okay, I don't want to go next year, I want to go 23, 24. Well, our deadlines are pretty much always, if you're doing summer, fall, and year, the deadline is going to be somewhere in winter quarter. If you're doing a winter spring program, the deadline's always going to be in the spring quarter the year prior. So what to do next? I'm not going to really go through all of this because I'm going to already have all your information, and tomorrow you're going to get an email that is going to have explicit what to do next for each program. You just got to read and follow the instructions. So there are many more things to do. The one thing I will say is all of our programs, with the exception of FLEEP, the UCAP and OAP program, it is a dual application process. So what you do in My UCR Abroad is not just the one application process. You also need to apply directly to those programs. So it is going to be a dual application process for those two programs. Talk about assessment. So where we're located, well, of course, we're all going back to school next week. Woohoo! So we are located in Sky Hall, and some of you are like, where is Sky Hall? Well, if you know UNLH, I think it's University Lecture Hall, we're right across from that. If you're like, I don't know where that is. If you know where the ARC is, that's Sky Hall. We're in the same building up on the 3rd floor. That's our email and of course, our website. During the winter quarter, we're only meeting in person or virtually by appointment only, which you can make through My UCR Abroad. And then if you're like, okay, I can't get one of you because I know we are very busy people. We still have our Zoom chat room this quarter, Mondays and Wednesdays 1 to 4, and Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10:30 to 1:30. So you'll either have either myself and Macy in the room to help you, or any one of our student interns or volunteers to help you in there. So I'm going to turn this over to Macy.
Thanks, Sharon.
And our panel.
Thank you. All right. I know that was a lot of information to take in, but as LaSharon had shared and myself, there's lots of resources, including human resources, available to assist, whether it be through email or in our EA chat room. We're here to help you along the way. And speaking of help, we have 4 amazing Education Abroad students who are currently abroad and or have returned. Today we are joined by Madison Reicholt, Christina Chen, Cassidy Hang, and Ryan Grijalva, which I think Ryan is not here.
Yeah, Ryan's missing.
So we just have Madison, Christina, and Cassidy here today. So thank you so much to you panelists for making yourselves available and sharing your experiences and tips and advice for students who are maybe on the edge of deciding whether or not to learn abroad. So let's go around real quickly and we'll start with Madison. Just share with us again your name, your major, year, and where did you learn abroad?
Hi everyone, I'm Madison again. I am a 4th year environmental science major here at UCR, and I studied at University of Copenhagen in Denmark last fall semester.
And was that through UCEAP, Madison, right?
Yeah, that was through UCEAP.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Cassidy, you're next.
Hi everyone, my name is Cassidy and I'm a 4th year studying in business administration with a concentration in marketing. And last fall semester, I got to study abroad in South Korea at Yonsei University through UCEAP.
Thank you, Cassidy. And last but not least, Christina.
Hi everyone, my name is Christina. I am a 4th year liberal studies education double major. And I study abroad in South Korea at Yonsei University through UCAP.
All right, so I know we're leaning on UCAP at the moment because our panelists all went through UCAP. Unfortunately, we're not able to get any past FLEEP students or OAP participants. So if you have any specific questions about those programs, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or LaSharon. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. But nevertheless, student experiences of just learning abroad, right? No matter what program you're on, we want to learn from the 3 of you a little bit more about the pre-departure process, finances, experience abroad, and just your overall just returning home. So let's start with the first question. Did you always know you wanted to study abroad? Madison, we'll start with you again.
All right. I would say so. I knew I wanted to venture out, and I thought being in college was the perfect opportunity to do that. Just because they make it so easy to get into a program that transitions you into a society that you're not familiar with in a very almost seamless way. And so, yeah, ever since high school, I knew I wanted to do that, and I've been attending these kinds of workshops since my freshman year. So.
Yes, we've been working with all of these students for well over a year before they finally got to go abroad. So you'll get to know LaSharon and I very well during this process. Thank you, Madison. Cassidy, Christina, would you like to touch on that question as well?
Yeah, I can go first. For me, it was the opposite actually. I never planned on studying abroad going into college. It was very much on a whim of wanting to explore something different, do something different before I graduate. And through this experience, I would say that I definitely learned a lot of culture shock, and also having to adapt to a new environment, meeting new people abroad. And because of the pandemic, it was my first time having to socialize again and meeting new people. So it was definitely different, but at the same time, it was very fun too. You definitely learn a lot of things, and the process in itself was, of course, a little bit complex, but at the end of the day, there are advisors and people and friends that are willing to help you. So as long as you go out of your way to talk to others and even talk to us, and the process will be as simple as it can be.
I grew up abroad, I grew up different places, so I knew that in college I wanted to also go study abroad. So I came to college with that mentality already, with that goal in mind. And I think due to the pandemic, my third year and part of my second year of college, it was a even bigger motivator for me to go study abroad, because the way I saw it is like, if I'm already at home, I'd rather be if I'm already at home taking online classes, I'd rather be like somewhere else taking online classes, because that gives me like the opportunity to explore a new city and like meet new people while still doing school, that is flexible enough for me to still do my academics well and like balance my social life as well. Yeah, it was a little complex, like Cassidy said, like doing the paperwork and such, but I think it is really, really like rewarding at the end, because you do get to experience everything abroad, and it feels rewarding after all the process.
Thanks, Christina. I will say that any good thing comes with a lot of work, right? So even for you guys to apply to UC Riverside, right? That takes work. Applying for a job or grad school, it takes some work, and the benefits outweigh the work that you put into it, right? So thank you all. Another common question that comes from students is related to pre-departure and planning and deciding what program to go for. Any advice on how to encourage or help students who are trying to figure out like a location, or what program works out best for them? As again, everyone knows, there's 3 different options. What helped you to finally decide that UCEAP, Denmark, or South Korea was the one for you, and how long was that process for you?
I can start off. For me specifically, it came down to what like LaSharon was saying about what was my purpose in going into it. And I, as an environmental science major and just a sustainability advocate, once I went into, it was actually a workshop through the study abroad office here on the Denmark program. Once I saw how they function as a society, I knew I wanted to experience that for myself. And so that really was the ultimate push for me to go to Denmark, especially. I mean, I had so many other options, but especially also going to a place right next to Europe, I was able to also go into other countries that I may have wanted to at least visit. So that was also in consideration when I chose Denmark. yeah, advice is just figure out what you want to do, and that's your main goal, and then see what most can apply to that.
I can go next. So for me, it was about my interest in the country that I wanted to go to. Because for me, K-pop was a huge thing growing up. I love listening to K-pop and the music, the watching the variety shows, or even like the drama itself. Because I had some sort of connection to Korean culture already, I really wanted to study abroad in South Korea. And then I did more research on what type of universities were there. There's Yonsei University, Korea University, Hanyang University, just like so many universities in Korea that you can apply to. But the reason why I decided to go with Yonsei specifically is because Yonsei offers a really good business program. And being a business major, I really wanted to see what the international business side would be like at Yonsei. And I definitely got a lot of good knowledge and skills and a different international perspective from that program itself. So that's why I went through Yonsei, and then with UCAP, it just connected really well with each other, as UCAP does offer going to Yonsei University.
Yeah, for me, the purpose was more like a cultural understanding and having a wider cultural lens, a worldwide lens about different cultures, and it's a different country. Just like Cassidy, I did like K-pop had a big influence growing up, like in my middle school days and high school. So I already had some sort of like connection to South Korea. However, I didn't want to go to just South Korea just for like the K-pop influence, but more to connect or just to know more about the Korean culture, because coming from like a Chinese background, there's a lot of like historical overlaps and a lot of like historical overlaps and a lot of like historical moments that both cultures coincide. So I wanted to know more about that. And when I was picking or like deciding on a location to study abroad, I had several options in mind, but I had to be very realistic when it came and like with the like COVID regulations, especially during this time. Like, I had to do quarantine. Well, like, do this country allows like visitors to come in, like what are the likelihoods for this program to like be successful, like in regards of like would it be canceled in the future, like do I see like the conditions worsening or like improving. And for me, South Korea seemed like a good option, because although we had quarantine, the quarantine time was relatively less than like China, because that's another option I wanted to go to, and they allow visitors in, so I decided to go with South Korea because of that as well.
Thank you, Christina. So as you all can see, there are varying pathways to deciding what program fits you. All we ask is that you commit a year or more in advance to start thinking, planning, researching options, because researching all the thousands of options that are available to you, that takes time. It's like shopping for, a new pair of hiking boots. You don't want to just buy the first pair of boots you see, right? You want to do some research, right? And that same idea applies to shopping around for an education abroad program. We're all about helping you to find the best fit, but you know yourself the best. So giving yourself enough time to research, read, ask questions, and attend workshops just like this to get a sense of what it's all about. So just starting early is the key. All right. So switching gears a little bit, we're going to talk a little bit about finances, as that is also a very common topic that comes up from students. So my question for all three of you is, how did you budget for your program, and as well as for expenses while you were abroad?
I can start off again. I think, majority of my funding came from depending on financial aid. And I also went to the path of applying to a lot of scholarships. Like everyone says, I don't know, even through high school, people say apply to scholarships, and it's very true, just because there's money out there that people want to give to you. And so just applying for it can really put you out there. And I did receive 2 scholarships for my study abroad. Thank you. And one, unfortunately, I wasn't able to do just because of the country that I went to. It didn't meet the criteria, but even just having that other scholarship there really helped me. And also I have been, saving for the past couple of years, because me personally, I have been knowing that I wanted to go abroad for a while. So planning ahead, like they were saying earlier, is making sure that you have loans available. I know a lot of people are scared to take loans, but I've been taking loans since my first year, and loans itself is scary, but if you really look into the details about it, seeing if it's subsidized or unsubsidized, and just making sure that you have a handle on it, can make it seem a lot less stressful. And so that's the path I took, is loans, grants, scholarships, and just depending on my financial aid and what I've saved up so far.
For me, just like Madison said, I actually took out some loans to go study abroad. I did apply for some scholarships, but unfortunately some of them didn't go through, which is okay still. I was able to manage my budget because I worked 2 jobs during the summer before leaving to Korea. And so from working at those 2 jobs, I was able to save a lot through my savings, and then, spend it when I was in Korea. And then when I was in Korea, I also had some budget from my parents. So my parents were very fortunate in giving me some money so I can use it over there. And just trying to make a spreadsheet for myself when I was in Korea. I try to do as much as like calculating, see what I spend, see what I could save, see what I need and don't need. I think just, having something on screen and to keep yourself accountable will help you budget throughout your time when you're abroad. And just like make sure that even with your savings, have a strict number on it on how much you want to spend and how much you want to keep coming back. So that way you're able to see, like you still have money when you come back to spend, and you can spend however much you want when you're abroad.
Yeah, just like Madison and Cass were talking about, a big part of like my finances came from financial aid. So luckily financial aid did cover partially my finances, and I worked the entirety of my junior year, so I saved up a lot of money for the study abroad, and I'm also very fortunate for my parents to be able to like sponsor my trips. But another reason why I chose South Korea is because the Korean won to USD conversion is relatively like less. So things abroad were considerably cheaper than like here in the United States. So whether it came from like material things or like food and transportation, that was all very affordable. So it was a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, because it led to like sometimes a lot of like overspending and a lot of going out. But it is expected when you're starting abroad, because you do want to like experience a little bit of everything. But I think like having a budget or like a tracking list, just like Cass was saying about like how much you're spending on each like category, really helps to like visualize and like track down where you should be spending less, or maybe you can like spend a little bit more on. So yeah, I think having some sort of like tracking list or like tracking device really helps budgeting.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, so as LaSharon was saying before, if learning abroad or really any high impact experiential activity that you decide to pursue as a UCR undergrad, you want to start planning ahead, right? And that includes budgeting and saving money, right? While education abroad, depending on where you're going and how long you're going for, can be very affordable. It really depends on where you're going and how long you're going for. Some programs, as LaSharon was saying earlier, are more expensive than others, might be more expensive to be abroad than to stay at UCR, or it might be more affordable for you to learn abroad than to stay at UCR. It really just depends on where you're going, how long you're going for, and also what financial aid you're eligible to receive. So it's very important to understand program costs and what your financial aid eligibility and financial aid package is. And that involves, looking at your RWeb account to see what have you been receiving, as a UCR student. And if you have any questions, to connect with your financial aid advisor. But loans are available to assist you. I know it sounds scary. I know as a student myself, I didn't take out a loan until I went on my second program to South Korea. And I took out, as much as I needed, up to whatever the maximum is. So I didn't have to take all of it. I took out what I needed and I was able to pay it back after I graduated UCR. So they're there to help you, and the interest rates are flexible. And again, you don't have to make payments on loans until after you graduate UCR. And of course, you will be working amazing full-time jobs after you graduate UCR to pay them back. So I fully believe in that. But yes, starting early also means saving funds from existing financial aid, crowd funds, savings, family support, and as every one of them have said, applying for scholarships as well, because there's a lot of money out there. And I offer a weekly scholarship workshop most Thursdays from 2 to 3 to help talk about the scholarship opportunities and also to help you to stand out in your scholarship applications. All right, thanks everyone. Again, changing gears. I just saw that Madison got booted off, so I'll add her back. Hey, Madison. So the next topic is just overall experience abroad. I'm sure all the students here have concerns about learning abroad during a global pandemic. We're still in it. But the world keeps turning, right? Like, you all successfully went abroad and you are back. So it is possible. And we still have students abroad right now. So it's possible. There are certainly challenges, but what has been your overall experience navigating COVID while you were abroad? Did you get any assistance from UCEAP, for example, or assistance from your study centers? What did it look like? But just what was your overall experience navigating COVID as a study abroad student?
Sorry, my computer crashed earlier, but I'm here. For me specifically, in terms of UCAP's help, I would get a text, I would say at least twice a month with like updates on the COVID situation in terms of Denmark, and specifically the area that I was around. There was another agency that would text me also with their updates. So everyone was always very up to date when it came to restrictions and such. And I did get lucky. I think just based in Denmark, we were, I think, one of the most safe countries while I was there. So there wasn't any restrictions for at least 4 months. When Omicron became kind of persistent or present in the country, restrictions came back about. But for majority of my time there, there was a lack of restrictions, and everyone was pretty safe. But there was a lot of information coming your way all the time. And to actually get there, it didn't take much. I just had a test within, I think, 48, 72 hours. I forget time, but I left in August. Coming back to the US was easy because as a citizen, it's very easy to do that as long as I tested negative. So overall, it wasn't that difficult for me to navigate just based off of my destination.
Just like Madison said, It wasn't hard to navigate around Korea with all the updates. UCAP was very, very diligent on sending all the students updates on what was going on, where to see like COVID cases or what to make sure of, have your documents ready before leaving to another country and what to expect when going back home too. And Yonsei specifically, they have a UC program or office just for UCAP students, and they would update us like weekly on how many cases there would be in Korea, the city that you're living in, if there's anything going on, like COVID cases, if they're rising, or maybe some sort of other like government thing that's going on. They're very, very diligent on that too. So I was very fortunate that UCAP and Yonsei's UC office was able to email us. But it was still kind of difficult to go there to Korea when a lot of things were happening, because Korea did have restrictions at the beginning and then later on they lifted it up. But then because COVID cases got really high at the end, more restrictions came. So right before coming back, I'm sure Christy can relate to me, but we had to test at the airport 24 hours before coming back to the US. And then there's just a lot of arrangement that had to happen. A lot of like mixed information left and right. But at the end of the day, I just kept asking people like, hey, what's going on? Or how did you go about going home? What are some things to prepare or documents? And at the end, we made it safe and sound. But yes, it does get difficult during this time in a pandemic, but that's what makes fun of it too, because you can remember all these experiences together.
Yeah, most definitely. Just going off from like Cass was saying, Korea was very diligent, or yeah, like very good at controlling the COVID cases and like informing its citizens about, how many like daily cases there were. And Korea also had like a QR system that you had to implement like on your phone. And everywhere you go, you had to like, if you didn't have the QR system before, because it takes a while to get your like phone number and like all the paperwork registered for the QR code. But before that, like you would have to, everywhere like you went, like a restaurant or like a mall or anything like a public facility, you would have to write down your phone number and your name. So then if someone tested positive during the same day that you were in the place, they will like notify you to go get tested, or just to be aware of like any symptoms and stuff like that. So in that regards, they were very good at controlling cases and like letting citizens know. And yeah, other than that, like the restrictions were a bit inconvenient at times, especially like there were some curfews, like time curfews that they were like implement during the beginning of our study abroad time. So it was a little complicating to navigate like going out with your friends at night, because first like people, like how many people could gather up like after 6 or like after 8. But thankfully like it lifted for a bit, and then once cases started to rise up with like new variants, they were implemented again. But by that time we were already coming back home, so it didn't impact us for like a dramatic like long time.
Thank you, everyone. I'm sure it was very challenging, but it's also challenging navigating, the situation here at home too. So might as well be in another place doing it and experiencing it in a slightly different way. But we really do believe that all of these experiences, whether it's COVID related or not, also just getting lost in public transportation, like these are challenges, right? You learn to overcome them. You're learning about yourself. This is all part of the experience, right? Unknowingly, you are helping yourself to develop critical skills. Whether you realize it or not, you're developing your flexibility and adaptability skills, which is so important as you are developing into adulthood, and so the more that you expose yourselves to situations of uncertainty, whether at home or abroad, the better you are as an individual in the long term. So what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? And we definitely, no problem, Michaela, and anyone else who needs to go. Again, there will be a recording of this to share. I just want to say to everyone here who's new to this world of education abroad that we prioritize students' health, safety, and well-being above everything else. We certainly will not send students to unsafe locations. And of course, there's no crystal ball to predict stuff, negative things that live through as well. You're supported every step of the way on multiple fronts, from UC Riverside, your program provider, and offices on the ground are there to assist you as you're navigating, everything from COVID to housing to courses, maybe other issues. There are people on the ground to support you. And this goes not just for UCAP, but also the FLEEP programs, the OAP programs, everything that Cassidy, Christina, and Madison are describing. You can expect participating from when you're participating with other options as well. Okay, so I just want to make that clear. All right, I'm just paying attention to the time here. There were a lot of questions in our original list of questions, so I'm just trying to select the ones that most students tend to frequently ask. So briefly, if you all wouldn't mind touching on housing, what was your housing option like? Let's start with you, Christina.
Yeah, so luckily for me, I was able to get on-campus housing at the Yonsei dormitories. And that was a separate application from UCAP. So this application is once you get admitted to the university and the program, and through like the home university. And it was a little challenge. It was competitive because there were so many students trying to get housing. So the website would like crash, and some students like didn't get like housing at all, and like had to wait for like the second round of like housing registration to occur. And I know a lot of other students also did Airbnb, so they would rent out like Airbnb house and just split the monthly rent with other people, friends, which was also a very convenient way of like living, because Korea is a very compact city, so everything is very accessible. Like going to campus or like the convenience store or like supermarkets, and public transportation is not an issue at all. So whether it be like living in the dorms or living off campus housing, is still like very convenient to have access to food, meeting friends, social life, and exploring and everything.
Thank you, Christina. Let's go to Madison, since Cassie, I'm assuming it was the same situation for you. Thank you, Christina.
Yeah, for me, once I was admitted into my program at University of Copenhagen, I was given different resources to look into. The major one that I went into was a housing option that catered to international students. So same thing, we had a wait list on a website. So we all like hurried to it. I was lucky enough to be like one of the first, because I just like sat there like midnight, 3 a.m. just waiting for it. But it was near campus, so there's a lot of different sites around the city. Just in terms of how the campus was set up, there's 4 campuses throughout the city, and so I was near the one that I was most likely going to have a class towards. But I know a lot of other international students, not just from the U.S., went outside of that site and went to Facebook messaging groups, went through the university's website, and different things. Like there's a lot of different ways you can get there, and there's a lot of different resources for it. So if you can always just branch out if one doesn't work out for you.
Thank you, Madison. A little bit more on housing options. It will vary from program to program. Some programs, there's only one option and there's no selection of any others. Others, there is many options that are available to you. So it really just depends on the program. So as you're researching program options, housing information is often available in the program description to give you a sense of what the options are, if any, and there is assistance to help students to acquire housing as well. Thank you. So coming to the category of returning home, Cassidy, I'll start with you. Is there anything about your education abroad experience that you would change or wish you had done?
That's a good question. Anything that I would have done differently? I would say I wish I learned Korean earlier because language barrier is a huge thing when you're abroad. And when you don't know the language, it can be quite difficult to communicate with other people or even trying to get yourself around. You know, even ordering at restaurants was quite difficult because sometimes I would say one thing, but then the waiter would say another, and you know, it kind of gets a little bit confusing like that. So I would say I wish I did learn Korean at UCR or even taking Korean classes outside of school. So that way I would have a better knowledge of how to communicate more fluently. Luckily, I still had a little bit background in Korean just because I watched a bunch of Korean dramas. But even then, it was still difficult to communicate with people. So yeah, just learning Korean. Mhm.
I can go next. I agree with Cassidy. Especially if you're going to like a country where English is not like well spoken. Definitely knowing the country's language, even just like basic phrases like how to order or like greetings, it really makes a whole lot of difference when like trying to get around. But even if you don't, we have technology like your phones and translator apps that allow you to communicate with other people. But for me, I would say in the very beginning, I got too excited, like right after quarantine, and like I went out to like everything I saw was just kind of like, oh, it's so cute, like I'm gonna just buy it. So there was a lot of like overspending in the beginning, because I was like, okay, maybe I'll buy this and maybe I'll need it later on. But as I was packing for coming back home, I realized maybe I could have like waited off a little bit, waited off on like things to buy because there's always going to be like sales or like bigger events or you can attend where um, like your money's more worth it instead of just buying like miscellaneous items. So yeah, wait off on buying like gifts in the beginning or like souvenirs, like and just do that like a little bit later once you're more settled in. Yeah.
I totally agree with Christina. I waited until I bought souvenirs until I came back home, and I think that was a big because also like packing is a nightmare when you're moving between countries. It's horrible. But specifically for me, I didn't have much of a language barrier. So in terms of my experience, I think what I would do differently is partake more into study groups. There's a really big study group culture out in Denmark. And so I wish I attended more group meetings with different people rather than just staying amongst either my UCAP friends or like a group of friends that I found in one class. I would have liked to have branched out just a little bit more, maybe done a little more focusing on my studies. That is half of the experience is studying. So that's one thing I would change, but I do appreciate all like the other aspects that I had in there, even if I wasn't able to attend to my studies as much as I would have liked to.
All right, thank you, everyone. I think those are really good tips for others to learn from your experience, that it's helpful to to know some basic phrases to get around, right? Even if you're not taking a language class in that host country, it's just good to have like a phrase book. And it's even easier now because you have all those translation apps. But yeah, knowing some basic phrases are really going to save you. And also it's just a respect thing as well. You know what I mean? It's like you're going to this whole other country and you don't know any of their language, you know? So it's, you know, that's just my own opinion, but also, you know, figuring again, how to budget and not overspend, because it can be easy to do. You have constantly every day feelings of YOLO, you know, you only live once and you don't want to miss out, etc. But it's difficult, right? When you're abroad, because you're excited to be in a new place. And Madison, to your point, it made me think about, yes, study groups, getting as involved as you can while you're there, making the most of your time. I would say personally, if I had to do it over again, I would have taken more advantage of internship and volunteer opportunities. If I had to do it over again, to think about the experience as a way to build up my resume. Yes, I have it still on my resume as, you know, under education. I went to Yonsei University. I went to University of British Columbia, but that's it. It would have been even better if I also had, you know, done an internship or a research project that I can also put under work experience. But again, that's just me. But it is, as part of my duties as an education advisor, I'm trying to inject that idea that this is an opportunity, not just to fulfill your personal and academic goals, but also your professional goals too, whatever they may be, that turn this experience into something that can also help you from that angle as well. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you, everyone. And I just wanted to leave the extra bit of time for those of you who are still here. Thank you very much. If you have any other questions that wasn't asked that you would like to ask our panelists, any questions at all, we have about 15 minutes or so left on the clock. So please feel free to speak into the mic, send me a private message, or type into the chat box. All right, so May is asking, does Yonsei require you to take a Korean language class?
For me, I didn't take any Korean language class. There are 2 language courses that you can take if you're interested in it. The first one is called KLI, and the second one is just regular Korean 1, 2, 3. You can do a placement test and then try to get placed into whichever Korean class that fits your requirements. But so far, yeah, Yonsei doesn't require you to take a Korean language class.
Correct. Thank you, Cassidy. Unless you want to take a language class at Yonsei, you can, but you would have to take a placement exam to assess your level. But overall, it's not necessary to learn Korean language with Yonsei. All right, Emily, thank you for your question. How many applications did you do before deciding to go where you went? Just as an FYI, the MyUCR Abroad portal only allows students to apply to 1 program happening in a single term. So I think what you're asking is how many programs or different programs were you kind of looking at before you decided on the program you ultimately went on?
A huge stack of different programs that I could go through. This wasn't like UCAP related programs, but they were like OAP programs. And I would just like flip through them to see what kind of characteristics that I appealed to. And that's also a good practice. Like, what kind of city size do I want? What kind of climate do I want? What kind of like finance estimation can I make? I went through so many before I decided which one. And even like, I wasn't even 100% sure on Denmark when I was applying. but this is the kind of thing that you just got to put all of your eggs, or like all, I don't know the phrase, but you got to put everything into and just go for it, because it's a one in lifetime opportunity. And I wouldn't change where I went to, even if there is some little thing, because it's not just about the place, but also the people. And you are surrounded by a lot of other international students coming from different places. And I still talk to some of those people now, and I get to hear about their stories still. And so, yeah, hopefully that helped a little bit.
Do you want to go, Christy?
You can go first.
Okay. For me, I had two other programs in two other schools in mind. So it was Yonsei Hong Kong University and one university in Japan that I don't recall on top of my head. But those three were my main three universities. Because like what Madison said, I was trying to see, do I want to go to a country where my family was originally from, because I'm Hong Kongese. So then would it be nice to go see my family over there, to go study abroad in my home country? Or do I want to go to Japan, where I love Japanese culture, Japanese food, the climate there is also really nice too. People, the culture, like everything like in Japan is just so beautiful. So that was another consideration. And as for Korea, it's like, oh, my influence that I have from K-pop, growing up with the music and the artists, all that stuff, would I want to go there? But at the end of it, it was just more of, okay, I want to be in a country where I can challenge myself, where I don't feel comfortable, because I want to feel uncomfortable to see what it's like, to see how I can work myself in a new environment and meet new people. And I definitely don't regret it at all, because I got to meet people like Christy and also so many other international students. And it's just really fun to reminisce about it right now, coming back home and then seeing what I have experienced over the course of the time that I was in Korea.
Yeah, very similarly, we what Cass just like shared. Yeah, so I had three options as well. First was Yonsei, and then Tsinghua University in China, and then some university in Japan. Ultimately, I decided to come to Korea because COVID regulations to enter China were very strict, and they weren't allowing the visa process, and the COVID, yeah, the whole COVID regulation in China was very strict. So realistically, I wouldn't have been able to like attend, even if I were to be accepted. The government wouldn't have granted me like the visa or anything like that. And then Japan was also very nice place I had in mind, due to like the seasons and a lot of like the culture there. It's a new environment, right? But one thing that kind of hold me back from choosing Japan is the food, because I am allergic to seafood, and Japan has it's an island. It's a country surrounded by the sea. So I wanted to keep my wanted to keep my options available when it came to like food. So I think Korea was a good in between when it came to realistic like COVID regulations and COVID control, and the types of food available, and just like a good balance for everything that I wanted to accomplish while studying abroad.
Thank you, everyone. So it's pretty clear that there are a lot of factors to consider when you are searching for a program. Everything from food, right? To the seasons. There are students who are like, I definitely don't want to be anywhere where it's wintertime. So they're going to go somewhere in the summer or the fall, right? And of course, you have to consider the southern versus northern hemispheres as well, because seasons are opposite. So lots of things to consider, everything from what we just talked about to program costs, housing options, LaSharon, she reviewed earlier, do you want to be fully immersed or not really immersed? Do you want to focus on just your major? Do you just want to focus on language and culture? So lots of factors. And this is why, again, it takes the process of just researching the best fit program for you takes a while. And this is why we tell students to plan 6 to 12 months or even longer than that. And many of these students right here speaking today, they started with us almost over 2 years ago, probably, and COVID obviously delayed, their efforts, of course. So, all right, LaSharon is throwing in a question. What's the thing you did or experienced that you recommend to a student that no matter where they're going, that you recommend that they do? Don't forget to do this.
The first thing that comes to mind is partake in like normal social activities. You don't want to miss out on things like, for me specifically in Copenhagen, it's a huge biking community. And if I like first week rented a bike and that's all I did the whole time I was there. And it was absolutely to be a part of that culture and to feel like truly immersed, like skipped out on. That's something I would deeply regret if I wasn't doing something that a normal Danish person did in their everyday. So I highly recommend that.
I would say find things that you can't do back at home. And whether that be like trying a new food that you can't find it like easily here in the United States, or being more culturally immersed, like going to visit the palaces or going like hiking. Yeah, it really depends on the country that you go to. I'm sure like there's a lot of things that are uncommon to do here, like compared to there. So just finding like the sorts of activities that are not easily accessible, or just like places that you wouldn't find yourself doing here that you can do abroad. Yeah, definitely go for it.
Mine would be make at least 1 or 2 local friends abroad. It doesn't have to be from the university itself. It could honestly just be a person, not like on the streets or something like that, but just like someone that you can talk to, because I have some friends that I made that are Korean local citizens, and now that we talk through our group chats, or like we just talk through like Messenger, it's just really nice to know that I have someone abroad that I can talk to and just, share the experiences, like, hey, like, remember when we did this, or remember when we got food together, or something like that. I think it's just really nice to know that not only did you make a new friend, but also that friend can help you explore the country, to let them share advice on what you can do when you're abroad. Because even though you're abroad, you might think, oh, like this is what I want to do, or like, of course you have a bucket list of things to take off. But at the same time, those people that live there their entire life, there's also some local things that you can do too, to immerse yourself in more of the country. Yeah, so just that. Just make some new friends. It's fun.
Well, LaSharon and I, we agree with all of the above. Definitely make friends with the local people, right? Because that's what you're there for, to meet new people, and definitely local people know what's happening. All right. Any other questions from students for our panelists? Okay, well, any last words of inspiration from each of you for anyone who is here and anyone who's going to access the recording later?
Going back to the question of what was it again? It was like, oh, what would you have done differently, or what could you have known before? Another tip I would say is to, um, even though you're abroad, you want to explore all of these amazing places, you want to experience the touristy life too. At the same time, try to put yourself as a local person in that country, because even though that you're abroad and you do want to do all those things, like I also did those things, I was that tourist person that went around. At the same time, I wish I could have been more in that local mindset, because it's just, there's a divide between those, being a tourist versus being a local citizen there. And I wish I could have done more. I wish I could have done the local stuff more, um, because it felt like at the end of my time in Korea that I had to mark all these places down. Like I had to go to this, and this. Like I had to do it. But then that was burning myself out instead. I felt like I was rushed. I felt like, oh, I could have done this earlier, but I didn't do it. But really, it's okay. As long as you're putting yourself out there and you're trying to, put yourself in other people's shoes that live in that country, then I think that's what's really important to do. Yeah. And also Korea, there's a lot of things that you won't expect. I know that through social media, Korea can be romanticized quite a lot. Any other country can be romanticized a lot. But remember that there's also the realization of going abroad, that there are things that you won't be expecting or that will turn your mindset 180. But don't be alarmed when that happens, because that's just how it is. That's how like people are like, or that's how the country is like. And just immerse and embrace everything that you can before going there, or even there too. Just enjoy yourself and not push yourself too much out there. Mhm.
Thanks, Cassidy.
Um,
Oh, Madison, go ahead.
sorry, something similar to what Cassidy was saying, is when I got there first, it was like I immediately wanted to get out there and start doing everything I could. But as people will start preparing you for it, as you begin your departure, it is, there are days where it's hard to get out there because it's just so overwhelming and there's so much happening, and you just kind of want to like hermit and stay in your shell. And I guess all I would like to tell myself back then is just to be kind to yourself, because you're not trying to do every single thing on your list, and you're not trying to compare your experience to someone else's. Because I had people over there that were doing everything. They were going to every kind of country that I could like name on the map. It was crazy. But to just reflect on your own personal goals and your own personal development is super important, and try not to pressure yourself into do anything. If anything, what I did is I had one thing every week that I would go to. And as long as I could go to that one thing, then that was a good week. And I did what I needed to out there, and that made it a fulfilling experience for myself. So I hope that could help someone else in the future.
Thank you, Madison. Christina, any last few words?
Yeah, I would say learn to be uncomfortable, especially because of the language barrier. Sometimes, like, I will find myself like, oh, I'm too embarrassed to ask for like a napkin or like a fork, or like, how do I say like I want a cup of water, right? And I realized that a lot of my friends, like, they just will like straight up speak in English to them, to anyone they went up to, right? And I realized, like, why am I so embarrassed that I'm a foreigner? Like, I know I'm a foreigner, so I know that they know that I'm a foreigner. So being able to be like, oh yeah, like, oh sorry, like, can you help me? Like, do you speak English? Oh, I know a little bit of Korean. Can you help me? Or being able to be like embarrassed at situations as well, like, uh, yes, you might not know the language and it might be like embarrassing like at the moment, but then you reflect back and think, well, I'm just trying to survive. It's everyday, day by day, like survival, right? Like, especially in a foreign country where you don't know the language. But at the end of the day, like, you made it through, you got what you needed, even if it was a little bit embarrassing at the time. So yeah, just be open-minded, that everything, there will be someone kind enough to help you, or have your phone out, in case like, or you really need a translation and like the words just don't communicate well enough.
Yeah, it's okay to be embarrassed. Everyone gets embarrassed. We all make mistakes, etc. These are all really good words of inspiration for everyone here. Thank you to all our panelists today. We're at time. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing your experience with other students. It is so important for prospective students to hear directly from you all on what it's like. And hopefully we will see each and every one of you soon through an application or workshop or an email or what have you. But we look forward to helping you make education abroad happen. Thank you everyone for being here today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.